Will you please welcome Vicky Colbert, the Yidan Prize Education Development Inaugural Laureate and the founder of the Fundación Escuela Nueva, and Carol Dweck, the Yidan Prize for Education Research Inaugural Laureate, and Lewis and Virginia Eaton, Professor of Psychology at Stanford University. Vicky Colbert and Carol Dweck.
Good morning, I did. Ladies, what an honor. I mean, this is truly, we have two luminaries of education here on the stage with us, and first of all, I want to just offer you my warmest congratulations. Let's give them another. I mean, this is an achievement, folks. The largest education prize in the world going to these two women. They've spent their whole lives dedicated to improving education, and I'm so excited to get to talk to you both. So how are you feeling the day after the big gala?
Great.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Good. You get some sleep, I hope. So I wanted to start out with what it is that inspired each of you to get involved in the particular projects you're involved with. Why don't we start with you, Dr. Dweck?
I saw so many students who were not pushing themselves to fulfill their potential, not enjoying learning. I saw tendencies in myself to play it safe, coming out of an educational system that valued, just getting the grades. And I thought, there can be so much more. We have no idea what any individual is capable of accomplishing if they have the passion and drive and the courage to step out of their comfort zone and persevere. So, as I said last night, I wanted to find the secret to that and bottle it and distribute it widely. And so I've devoted my career to understanding how children and adults can fulfill their potential.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Colbert?
I guess I had like two dimensions. One, I had the opportunity to have good schooling, and I enjoyed my school. And I have the best memories of going to a wonderful school. And then when I started visiting the isolated rural schools in Colombia, children were not smiling. They were not so happy as I was happy. So I think this was the first impression. And then when I did my studies in sociology abroad, then of course, then you say it's the only way, just improving quality, offering the opportunities for children to develop as human beings. So I started seeing that it's the only way to have change in society. It's the only way to achieve development, peace, democracy, changes in society. So I said, the best thing I can do in my life, for the rest of my life, is be involved in changing conventional education. So I had my personal situation and then my studies.
It's really ironic that this prize has been awarded. We talk so much now about the technology, the technological developments that are going to impact education and artificial intelligence, big data, and so much that is being opened up now at such a rapid pace. And yet, both of you are actually working on very much the classroom experience, the emotional level, what makes a student or a child achieve in life and how you approach it. It's a very, in a way, not super high-tech choice in a certain way. When you look at technology and its role in education, the development of education, what do you see that as being? And do you think we're going to see a classroom-less education in the near future? And is that a good thing, if so?
Yeah, so I think we're both committed to the idea of equality. And I think People who started the tech revolution in education thought it would bring automatic equality, that you would have these skilled technologies in the classroom. But it's not automatic. And it will never replace the human interaction. So we have to learn slowly over time how to integrate technology with human teaching. We're working on how to integrate growth mindset into technologies, but it will never be the same as a teacher who says, I am committed to your development and I'm a resource for your development in life.
Yes, the human dimension is essential in our context. Children have to look into their eyes, dialogue, reach agreements together, and you cannot replace that. Of course, technology can trigger change very significantly, but I think you have to have the changes in pedagogy first. I always quote a good friend of mine from Uruguay, Luis Josín. He was the head of the technological center in Israel, and he used to say in Latin America, just at the time when computers were coming in and laptops, just introducing laptops or in your classroom without changing your pedagogical model perpetuates at a higher cost the traditional technique. So in our case, I mean, I have to be very honest, technology has triggered change in developing countries, and it can be really very supportive. But the first thing you have to do is change the way you learn. In the schools I work in Colombia, in the really rural, isolated schools, we don't have connectivity. So that's the reality. So we have to introduce it gradually, but always supporting the human interaction. You cannot replace it. So for us, pedagogy is essential.
No secret, and we referred to this in your speeches last night, that the current education system was really developed at the beginning of the industrial age, and I believe it was you, Dr. Dweck, who referred to the idea that if you brought a teacher from the 19th century into a classroom, sorry, Ms. Colbert. If you brought a teacher from the 19th century into a current classroom, they would basically recognize it would be very familiar, whereas if you brought a doctor into current day hospital, they would have no idea what it was about. Which just shows you that not a lot has changed in our classroom formats. So now we're at the next industrial revolution, and it's obviously well underway. What changes would you like to see in the classroom experience, in the educational experience, to be in line with the new challenges that this new industrial revolution is bringing? Go ahead.
Yes. As we know, the world is very exciting now, and we have no idea what the future will have in store. But we know, and we don't know exactly which education will prepare students, but we know that the education they're getting now will not prepare them. The changing world will not involve taking tests, memorizing facts, and taking tests. So we need an education system that teaches them how to think, how to take ill-formed problems and whack them into shape, how to test hypotheses, and how to make progress in solving problems. Some very exciting schools in the US, some new kinds of universities are problem-focused. What are the problems of society, and how can we bring our curricula to bear on that? How can we give people practical experiences in solving problems in today's world? That's the kind of thinking we need. Testing, grading, saying who's smart, who's not, this is not preparing the students for the world of
So would you
tomorrow.
do away with testing? I know we have some testing people in the audience, so controversy coming. Would you do away with testing and grading?
No. I would not do away with testing and grades, but I would not make them the focus of education. They're a snapshot at one moment in time of how a student is doing, how a school is doing. It's informative, but it's not the goal of education to have a score on a test. The goal of education is to create these joyful, effective learners who will take their skills and values to shape the world of tomorrow.
Mrs. Colbert?
When we started seeing how to improve the results in these isolated schools, well, the first thing is, there was diversity in the classroom, which is wonderful. And in these remote multi-grade schools, well, you have to handle diversity. So that's good. This is why I said last night, necessity is the mother of innovation. So when you started seeing in a classroom, that you couldn't have a teacher speaking to the different groups because they're different levels, everything. So we were starting to talk about personalized learning. Not everybody learns the same thing at the same time. So we had to introduce flexibility and self-paced learning. So, we had to take the national curriculum, modularize it, and package it in a different way for the delivery of it so that we could respect that different children learn at different rhythms. That was one dimension. And for us, it was a necessity, personalized learning, and now it's something that everybody should be having and talking about. But the other thing is cooperative learning. I don't know, Carol, if you remember Elizabeth Cohen in Stanford. She was my professor. And I was in Latin America. You don't hear about cooperative learning. We're very individualistic. And when you start seeing, you see the theory of education, that, social constructivism and all these things that are now, well, when you just start introducing cooperative learning approaches, when children learn to dialogue and reach conclusions together, they learn so much more. Peer tutoring. It's so essential. Children learn so much more from others. So here is the whole dimension of cooperative learning, which is not new, but we know that this has a tremendous impact on reducing stereotypes, on learning to listen to dialogue and reach conclusions. So we combined both personalized and cooperative learning. And this forced, the children forced the teacher to have a new role. Because when you empower them, then the role of the teacher has to change. The real role of the teacher, that has to have more time supporting, listening to children, giving them love, knowing their different learning styles. So for us, it was a combination of the two. But then we started seeing that with all these changes that are taking place, you just want to support them to learn. Because content is changing so fast. Mm-hmm. So we started tackling these 21st century skills, learning to learn, supporting them to be leaders, to take initiatives. But I think the most important part was how to work in teams and construct knowledge together. Now, the Latin Americans, they say things in a complicated way sometimes. We want to go from transmission of information to social construction of knowledge, which has profound dimensions for democracy also. But I think for us it was very important to listen to all these theories, but at the same time, see how we could combine both personalized and cooperative learning and 21st century skills in the classroom.
You saw in both videos how kids were working together and looking happy. And several people said to me, the kids looked happy in school. As if it was, it is all too rare. But when you create those conditions, they're eager to be there, eager to work.
Mm-hmm. And this is why the first thing we started measuring was self-esteem. This was so important, self-concept. So when you support self-esteem for students, they grow.
How do you measure it?
I'm not the expert in the measurement. We had the University of Chile helping us out, but we have a scale to measure self-esteem, yes.
A question from the room, actually, that I've received on my highly technological iPad. What happens inside government? What's going on there that makes it seem that education is undervalued everywhere? Why is it only when you leave government you can get things done?
I'll let you answer. You work where
I was in government, and I remember the National Planning Office saying, we put money in education, we put money in education, we put money in education, and nothing happens. But then, more of the same is not enough. I always like to remember Joseph Farrell from the University of Toronto. He always used to say, you know, just expanding current educational systems as they are is not enough. So we had to start showing results. To have results, so we could get more money for funding, we had to have results. And this was important. So, but you definitely have to work with the politicians. That's the toughest part. But you just have to make sure that education systems have some type of important results. Because otherwise, you know, it's what they used to tell me all the time. More money into education and nothing happens. You know? So I think you have to also start showing efficiency and results. And having empirical evidence of what you're doing.
Yeah.
It was the only way. And for me at this moment, even in Colombia, I always have to come first when I come to a minister before they say, oh, here comes Vicky again, you know. No, we have no evidence. And now with the peace process, for example, we have evidence on the impact of Escuela Nueva in the peaceful coexistence of children. So you just have to have empirical evidence. And to influence politicians in Colombia, I first had to publish in the University of London so that then the politicians in Colombia could listen to us. So, so you need sound academic support behind whatever you do.
We have to educate the government. We have to show them there's a better way to get what they want in the future.
Mm-hmm. So would you then, you were mentioning that there's not connectivity even in a lot of the schools where you are working, where your schools are. Would you say to the government, we need connectivity, put the money toward that, we need it now because these kids need to be part of the World Wide Web, et cetera? Or would you put, are you arguing for financing to be used in a different way?
Yes, in a different way, because since we work with local governments, the case of Colombia and Latin America is very decentralized. You know, you cannot take the responsibility of governments away. I mean, health and education are their responsibility. You just have to help them do it better, okay? So in our situation, anything we can say is, I'm putting this, how much are you gonna put in, okay? We cannot take the responsibility away.
We have a question that was submitted to us by social media for the both of you, and it reads, if education is only job-oriented, if you're educating people to have good skills, to get good jobs and have a good standard of living and contribute to the society, will it produce well-rounded individuals? So to enlarge the question maybe a little bit, you know, who are we trying to produce now? Who should we be trying to produce out of our educational system? What kind of people?
I think that we are worried now. We saw the Yidan video, we knew it before. We are worried now about jobs of the future. We are worried that students aren't having the value of contributing to society in worrying about just their achievement. So we've focused on that. But the arts, literature, my husband, the wonderful David, is in theater, which is so powerful. And ideally, we can make those all compatible with being a citizen of the future.
It's definitely better human beings, persons that have empathy. It's so important when I listen to Bill Drayton from Ashoka, you know, he says one of the most important skill younger people should master is empathy and compassion. I think it's so important. Now, in our situation, teamwork is crucial, but we also want to stimulate that they continue learning to learn, what I mentioned before, you know. These types of 21st century skills are so important, that they take initiatives, that they lead processes, that they reach conclusions, that they can work in teams and not use force, that they learn through dialogue. So I think these are the dimensions we need in education for the future. We don't want robots.
We don't want robots.
As humans.
No.
They want us. With globalization and the technology that's going along with it, which is in so many ways a wonderful thing. You know, we all have now so much more access to the information of what's going on in the world than we did before. But do you encounter the issue of children being overwhelmed and having too much information, feeling that they're too challenged to make their mark because there's just so much going on out there? Is that something that you're dealing with or not?
Yes, the children are under so much pressure to achieve, to be the best, to be perfect, to get into the one right school. A huge proportion of kids coming even to the most elite universities are on medication for anxiety and depression. Where is the joyful learning? We said yesterday in our discussion, the thing you want is for kids to show up at school happy, to get there eager to learn. The pressures we're putting on our young people are crippling them and are counterproductive. So I think we're both committed to getting the joy back in learning, to have students think they're learning what they want to learn, they're learning things that will further them. They're learning in a context with the teamwork, with an adult who's saying, I am committed to your development, not I am judging you. I am judging your worth. They need their parents to be committed to their development, not committed to making me have a student at a prestigious place. So I think we need to be clear again what we're doing to our kids.
Something that we started seeing is children in these isolated areas are not so overwhelmed as children in cities.
Mm-hmm.
But since we wanted the children become agents of change also, so we tried to introduce very simple strategies so that anything the child would learn could be applied to their family and their community. And that the homework for us is I dialogue with my parents. Mm-hmm. I ask my parent I ask my mother if my younger siblings have all their vaccinations. So because we incorporate so many health and environmental issues. So I ask my parents and I make a list of my siblings that don't have the vaccinations. And I bring it to the school and I tell my teacher and I talk to my parents. So children become agents of change. But at the same time, even if their parents are illiterate, we want them to respect their parents and respect their culture. So we started seeing how can we bring the culture of the community inside the school. So there are many simple mechanisms that we had to design so that children would feel part of a community, mm-hmm. and that they were leaders, future leaders and agents of change, and that they respected their parents even if they were illiterate because they had wonderful knowledge. Mm-hmm. So it's just how to establish this relationship between school, parents, and community.
In our growth mindset programs, we ask students, what do you want your contribution to be? And they write amazing things, contribution to their family, community, society. And then we say, how can you use a growth mindset? In my seminar to freshmen at Stanford, I say, today your job is over, your old job is over. You're not here to get grades, they're fine. You're here to become the person who will make your unique contribution to the world. And suddenly they see everything in a new way.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Yes.
We want students thinking, what do I want to contribute, rather than, am I perfect, did I get an A, what's my test score?
Yeah.
As you know, as recipients of the inaugural Yidan Prize for Education, you're receiving a cash prize as well as funds to further your work. So I'd like to know how you're going to spend the money, even though it's not about the money.
Well, we're both using all of the money for our work. It's opened up such vistas for us. The prize is not just a prize, it's a huge opportunity to think big, to think about what we can do. We're talking about working together, combining our work in a very exciting way. So
Wonderful.
So wonderful.
teamwork.
We have, as an NGO, we have had a strategic plan. And so it's going to enrich and give oxygen to our strategic plan of implementation, of research and development, of, we have our strategies very clear. So this will be gasoline, oxygen for all our strategic plans that we already have put in place.
Well, I just heard, I don't know if we all just heard that, but that the money is all going to the project work, which is an amazing statement from these two fantastic educators. And we're going to look forward maybe at next year's summit to hearing what you're doing together and how the prize has impacted your ability to do that work. Thank you so much for this conversation. We're so honored that you're here. And wishing you every success in your continued work. It's so important, and just great to meet you both. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Vicky Colbert, the Yidan Prize Education Development Inaugural Laureate, and the founder of the Fundación of Escuela Nueva, and Carol Dweck, the Yidan Prize for Education Research Inaugural Laureate, Lewis and Virginia Eaton, Professor of Psychology at Stanford University. Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you. And thank you very much to Ellen Pinchuk, Deputy CEO of Mikolov and Partners and former correspondent for Bloomberg and CTV Canada.